Hey guys, my name is Brittany Lay and I just finished my first year of medical school and I have so much to talk about. This is first year of medical school Unwrapped. These are my notes for today's little session. I'm going to talk about things that I've learned, things that I wish I knew, tips, advice, study methods that I've tried and used, my experiences with anatomy, our patient simulations, practicals, all that jazz. Since I'm talking about so many different topics today, feel free to skip around. There are going to be chapters in this video with everything that I'm talking about. You can just skip around and watch the parts that are more relevant to you. Let's get started. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about was something that I've learned, and also something that I've wished I knew, was medical school is competitive. Everyone that around you has gone through similar paths. They've had similar experiences. Basically, everyone's fairly smart. So you're competing with people who are around the same level as you. At the end of the day, we're all competing for residency spots. So we are trying to get the highest grades. We're trying to get the best scores on everything. And that just means medical school can be pretty cutthroat sometimes. What I had to learn was to stop comparing myself to others. I remember going through my content and overhearing my classmates talk about how they have done this already, they've done that already, they've already looked over next week's lecture, and I am still looking at what we learned today. It took me a while to realize that just because someone else may be ahead, it doesn't mean that you should also work at the same pace. I found that I had to take things slow, and I was just not going to be the person that is reviewing material that's 2 weeks out. That's just not who I am. I had to stop feeling bad for being behind, when in reality, I wasn't behind. Everyone just has their own pace, their own timeline. It also stressed me out to hear people talk about these concepts in great detail when I've barely even looked at them yet. It makes me feel like, why do I not understand this yet? Am I just not that smart? A lot of those thoughts came to me. It made me feel bad about myself because I didn't fully understand those concepts as well as my classmates did. And so it made me think in my head that my classmates were smarter than me, more prepared than I am. There was a time where we had an exam review and I was looking through my grades and I overheard my classmates, the same classmates who were so confident in this material, talk about their exam scores. And when I compare them to mine, I did fine. All of this is to say, just because people are verbally confident about the content they know, some people like to brag, that doesn't mean anything. You just really have to focus on your own progress, your own success, your own achievements, accomplishments, and try your best not to compare yourself with others. The moment that I stopped comparing myself to others, I was able to focus on my own goals and not stress out too much about other people. The second topic I want to talk about is organization. It is literally so important. Medical school can be overwhelming at first because there are so many due dates, so many assignments. You're constantly trying to figure out the best ways to study. Sometimes there's busy work, there's assignments, projects, quizzes. Back in undergrad, I used a calendar, and I wish that I was consistent with using the calendar when I got to medical school because I forgot a lot of quiz due dates. I could have gotten a 10 out of 10 on those quizzes and I got zeros, which costed me my grade and caused a lot of stress. You want to be as low stress as you possibly can be in medical school, and if you are organized, that would definitely help. Keeping things in a calendar with reminders so that you don't forget those due dates is so important. And also having a sense of accountability is also great. My med school besties keep me accountable. We started to remind each other of when certain things are due, like, hey, have you done this assignment yet? Have you done this quiz yet? Sometimes I have so much going on in my brain that I completely forget things. And that happens. And also everything in medical school builds up. If you know where you're keeping all of your old content, it will definitely help because you will have to go back and reference old PowerPoints, old notes that you've taken. Some of the exams are cumulative. I'm in an osteopathic medical school, and for those exams, it's always cumulative. We've had to answer questions from a previous semester. So it's good to know where you're keeping all of your stuff. I keep all of my PowerPoints in the Files app on my iPad, labeled with the semester, the exam, and the class that PowerPoint is from. So I always know where to go to find that material. I wanted to talk about some of the experiences I had. The biggest thing that I questioned when going to medical school was anatomy. I've worked as a scribe in the emergency department, so I have seen death before, But the idea of doing dissections on cadavers was quite scary to me. I was low-key, high-key freaking out in the beginning. The way that they do it in my medical school really eased us into the process. During orientation week, we were allowed to see our first patient. They brought us into the anatomy lab. We got to see the donors for the first time, and we were allowed to touch and see what we would be getting ourselves into before class actually started, so that we don't freak out when we actually have our first dissection. And it's not as scary as you think. It was hard at first, but it gets better over time. At my medical school, we started with the donors face downwards. Their faces were covered, so we were slowly exposed. By doing it that way, most of us were okay. We've had some very gruel and very gnarly dissections where we had to take out the spine, or the last dissection I had was actually to saw off the leg. I've had to bisect the head, but by that time I've already been exposed to dissections for a while, so we all felt comfortable. Most likely you'll be working in a group, so if you're not very comfortable with doing certain things, there's always people in your group that will be more comfortable and would want to take on those. I was one of those that loved to cut. I'm interested in surgeries. I'm so grateful that these individuals have donated their body to science so that we can learn. I definitely feel like it has been so helpful to see all the structures and their relationships, and it really helps us understand what we will be looking at in the future. For MDs, they have OSCEs. We have SPEs, which stands for Standardized Patient Encounters. Some medical schools wait until second semester to begin these. Our school started in the very beginning. We have patient actors, and we're playing as doctors. It's basically role play, just some acting, if you like to think about it like that. It's a great experience for us to interact with people that we've never met before. We learned how to take patient history, do the review of systems. We learned how to do the physical exam, and also come up with a workup, an assessment of what the patient may have, and also come up with a plan. I found it very beneficial to have so many of these. We had 5 the first semester, with the last one being a truly graded one where like everything in the encounter was graded. The encounter itself, the oral presentation we do with the professors, and also the soap note are graded on that last one. And then the second semester, all of them are graded. It definitely does feel stressful at first, but it is an amazing way to get practice. These used to be so high stress for me, and now that we've done so many of them, it's a lot less stressful. We didn't have anatomy practicals, but we have OMEM practicals. We had to go into 3 separate rooms and perform techniques relating to osteopathic principles and techniques. I also found those to be very stressful at first. There were so many different techniques we had to learn, so many different points in the body, and different positions to put patients in. But as time goes on, it becomes pretty repetitive because those techniques overlap. They were also cumulative, so we'd have to keep going back to learn them, and you get to the point where you really know what you're doing. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that all of these things may seem like they're daunting at first because it's new, but it gets to the point where you do it so much that it feels almost easy. So don't worry, it will get easier. This is the part where I feel like a lot of people would be interested in hearing is study tips and methods that I have tried and which ones I use. So I want to start by saying that when you're studying, you do have to find your own method. Everybody studies differently. I've tried countless methods to figure out what works best for me. Not only do people study differently, but each class requires you to learn in a different way. I find that I study differently for all of my classes. Every exam is different. When I was studying for cardio, it was different than when I'm studying for GI. Another important thing is balancing efficiency and quality. Writing down every single detail takes too much time, so you have to figure out how much detail you want to highlight, which topics are high yield. When you figure out which details are important to know for the exam versus which details are just good to keep in the back of your mind, it will save you time on studying and also help you study more efficiently. So the ideal sequence for studying is going through the material 3 times. This is something that I always strive to do, not necessarily do though all the time, given the fact that we have so many classes and there are also other events going on in the school at the same time, other events going on in my life, and it's just not always possible to do this, but this is what I would recommend. The first pass of the material should be before you enter the class. I found it helpful to always download the PowerPoints before the class and skim through the material, kind of get an idea of what the lecture will look like. You can jot down some notes, but I would recommend just skimming. Sometimes I would preview the material and end up taking notes when I don't even know what I'm taking notes about, and I end up wasting a lot of time. So I would recommend skimming the notes the first time. The second pass should be done when you're in class. The professors always love to highlight high yield things, and when you hear that this is most likely going to be on your boards, it's most likely also going to be on the exam. Highlight, circle, put a star, because the professors know best which content is important. The third pass is usually the pass that I don't get to, which is doing practice questions. I have this weird thing where I feel like I need to learn all the content before I do practice questions, and then I end up not doing enough. It's always good to either come up with your own practice questions, pull questions from a question bank, or even create some questions with ChatGPT. But like I said, I find it hard to make it through the third pass and end up looking at all the content the day before the exam. But if you can, that would be ideal. I'm about to go over the methods I use to actually study, and also in which third-party apps I use and recommend. So I actually love taking paper notes. I love making these study guides. I find them very helpful. They just take forever. Like, I have so many notes. These are written on my iPad that I've printed out. I've also tried typing them out and inserting pictures, which was nice. For classes like pathology, I love to insert pictures because we have to know the histology, the gross morphology. I've tried writing on paper, I've tried writing on the iPad, I've tried typing on my laptop, and the thing that helps me most is to write down stuff. But like I've said, it just takes so long, and there are moments where I spend so much time writing down the notes that I don't even have enough time to review all the stuff. I spend a lot of time making study guides, and then I don't even look at it. ANKI is also something that my classmates swear by. I have people who solely use ANKI to study. It's just not for me. I've done it so much in undergrad that I'm tired of looking at it. I only use it for anatomy cadaver images because I need that repetition. But when I see so many cards, I get overwhelmed. I don't even look at them. I've also spent so much time making the cards, but my classmates have found a PDF to ANKI converter, and that saves them a lot of time, but then that also creates so many excess cards. I'm just not a huge fan. When the semester started, I tried using ANKI again, and ANKI's just not for me unless it's for anatomy. But there are a lot of people in my class who love it, and I feel like if you use it correctly and you don't overload yourself with cards, then it would be a very helpful resource. I use this app called Flora, and it's a Pomodoro timer. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a study method where you have a certain amount of time where you focus on studying and then a break. For example, you can study for 30 minutes and then take a 5-minute break, or an hour and then take a 10-minute break. It's really up to you. I tried using this and I actually swore by this at the beginning of the first semester. Towards the end, I found it almost toxic because I'm like, ugh, I didn't study this many hours or this much time today. It started to negatively affect me, so I stopped using it. But it's very cute. Every time you finish studying, you get a plant. I've had a lot of plants. So if you are someone who likes timers, I would use that. I don't know where my timer is, but I also have a little stopwatch timer clock thingy. It has a cute face on it. It's so adorable. I used it for a little bit, then I'd stop using it, and then I'll use it again, and then I'll stop using it. I tend to try a lot of different methods, and if it doesn't work, I'll stop using it and I'll try again later. Sometimes I can use timers, other times I have so much trouble locking in, but then when I do lock in, I study continuously for hours on end. I think it's called Forest, but it's not free. Flora is free. If you need a study timer, I would recommend Flora because it's free. For note-taking apps, I use Collanote. I am all for free apps. I don't use GoodNotes or Notability. I use Collanote. I love it. I take all of my iPad notes on here. They also have flashcard options where you can create your own flashcards, and they have images as well. It's kind of like ANKI, but you write the flashcards And for those of you who love to write and not just type, that's a good option as well. For note taking, I've also tried Word. For pharmacology, I love having a table for all the different medications. I would separate it based off of the classes of the drugs and then their mechanisms of action, their adverse drug effects, drug interactions, or anything like that. I have it color coded in a way where I remember it. Tables are a good way to simplify material. Word is easy to use. Everyone uses Word, so you can use it digitally. You can also print it out. I love printing stuff out because I like being able to see everything that I'm learning. I print it out so I can highlight, write notes, and just physically see how much material I need to get through. I love using the Notes app on Apple to write down all my to-do lists. I'm a sucker for to-do lists. To-do lists make me feel productive even if I don't do the tasks. If I write it down, I'm like, oh, I'm being so productive. I want to do all these things. I also love to use Notion when I'm about to take an exam. I write down all the topics that are on the exam and I color code it. If it's red, that means I haven't looked at it. If it's yellow, then I've looked at the material once or I've created notes for that material. And if it's green, that means it's good. And I feel confident about that content. When I'm trying to figure out what day I want to cover this specific topic and then what day I wanted to cover this specific topic, I'll use Notion as well. ChatGPT. Oh my god, I was anti-ChatGPT for a really long time. I still am in some cases. I use it to create board style questions. I use it to make study guides. Also used it to do fake patient simulations. In my last vlog, I showed how I used ChatGPT to simulate a patient scenario for a GI problem. And they have a voice option where you can literally be like, hi, I'm Dr. Lay. I'm here to see you today. What's your name? And they'll actually give you a whole case. I found that very helpful. However, ChatGPT is not always accurate. Sometimes they give you wrong answers or the information is just not accurate. So you do have to be careful when you're using AI because it's not always 100% correct. But I do feel like if you're using it correctly, it could be a good source. Now, my favorite third-party app is Bootcamp. It is amazing. It is tailored towards USMLE, like for MDs, but they do have an osteopathic section now. The content is basically the same thing you're learning in class. And they organize it in such a great way. I think it's around like $400 for 2 years, which is perfect for studying for the boards. They have tons of practice questions. I use it a lot for anatomy, physiology. They have great mnemonics and just a different approach to what you learn in class. You can use it for previewing material. You can use it if you don't understand your own professors in class. They'll explain it in a different way. I would definitely recommend it if this was the only resource that you buy. Those are the apps that I use to try and study. But what I found to be the most helpful thing is those days leading up to the exam. I started doing this thing where I would set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes and go through a lecture as fast as I can. You're basically skimming. At this point, I should have already seen all the content before. I know which areas are more high yield, so I give myself around 10 minutes to skim through and jot down the most important things from that lecture. And by doing this, I can ensure that I go through all the material before the exam. Before I started doing this, I would tell myself, I'm going to go through all the PowerPoints, and it doesn't happen because I end up taking an hour or an hour and a half going over one PowerPoint, which is ridiculous. Like, it should not take that long. When I'm giving myself 10 minutes, I have to go through it as fast as I can and only highlight the most important things that I will need to remember for the exam. And I'll also try to keep it to 1 page max. That way, the night before the exam and the morning of the exam, I can go over the notes I just took and remember those for the exam. Now I'm going to talk about what I wished I would have done differently. The first thing is I wish I would have studied better. A lot of medical schools have online courses. We have mandatory classes, and they run from 8 to 5 Monday through Wednesday, and Thursdays we have 8 to 12. I just get so tired by the end of the day. In my first semester of medical school, I was so tired by the end of the day that I did not do any studying. I was maybe skimming a little bit for the next day, but I was not studying the material after class. I didn't study throughout the week. I barely studied on the weekends, and the day before the exam, I would sit for 7 hours and just cram. My friend from a different medical school, they were like, Brittany, why are you treating medical school like it's a side hobby? Yeah, I wondered that too. I was already at school all day, and to think about the fact that I have to go home, shower, eat, and study some more, I just couldn't. And I'm a pretty good crammer, And cramming works for me, but I realize it only works to a certain extent. When I'm trying to cram for like 30 different topics, it does not work. I did improve second semester because I would go home after, eat, shower real quick. Then I study from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. with my sister because she was studying for the OAT. It gave me a reason to have to go out and study. That kept me accountable, and I was able to study way better second semester. The next point is pretty related. It's about group study. I tend to study by myself, but whenever I did study with my friends, I found that it was really helpful to teach each other the content. You really do learn a lot when you have to teach it to somebody because it really requires you to actually learn the material. I always feel like I'm not ready enough to go and talk to my friends about it, so I tend to study alone in silence. So I do wish that I had done more group study instead of just study by myself all the time. And if I had studied better, studied with groups, then I would have mastered the material way before the exam is coming up. The content in medical school is not the hardest thing in the world. The hard thing about it is that you have to learn how to quickly learn all the material. The dean of my school loves to say that we're sprinting a marathon, and that's literally what we're doing. We are running full speed in something that's going to be a long stretch, and it's pretty hard to do. It's a whole process to figure out how to handle everything, how to handle all this content being thrown at you and the limited amount of time that we have. The last thing I want to talk about is avoiding burnout and how to overcome guilt, as I felt guilt in many different ways. I'm not burnt out because I've learned to give myself grace. There are people in my class who I see are so stressed out and already burnt out because they spend all their time studying. I try to spend a lot of my time with my friends and family and try to balance my personal life with school. And it honestly has made me so much happier, and I feel a lot less stressed. For some reason, if I can't study as well as I want to, or if I don't do as well in a quiz or that well in an exam, I try to just take it as a learning experience instead of being hard on myself. The more that I was upset that I didn't do well, the more stressed I got. It really comes down to balance. Yes, I want to study as much as I can, but to what cost? I personally feel if I had studied more, I would have done better on my exams, but then I wouldn't be happy. Since medical school is such a long process, being happy and less stressed is more important to me because it will allow me to keep going. Try to spend time working on my physical health, my physical well-being. I also tried to spend a lot of time with my loved one. It honestly has made all the difference. And the final thing is not letting the results define you. I did not make the grades that I was expecting when I got into medical school, and there were times where I did cry after a patient encounter because I felt like I didn't know anything and I felt like if I couldn't do this small thing, how am I going to be a physician? And like I said before, we just really have to learn how to give ourselves grace because we're just still medical students. We're not expected to know everything yet. I was so hard on myself in the beginning, and when I realized that this is a learning experience and that I don't have to know everything yet, it made me feel better, made me feel more motivated. The biggest lesson that I've learned after my first year of medical school is really learning how to love the journey and love myself so that I can become a better physician in the future for my patients. That's all I have today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it somewhat helpful. If you ever have any other questions, just feel free to message me or put it in the comments. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!